A, B, C, D, E, F,
G, H,
I, J, K, L.
Hello, you're listening to a podcast from the Pod Academy. I'm Lee Millam. What does it mean to be dyslexic? A new book, The Dyslexia Debate, says the term dyslexia is a broad and meaningless label. The book also suggests that children are often labelled dyslexic when exhibiting a range of different reading difficulties. One of the authors of this title is Professor Julian Elliott from Durham University.
One of the things that happen quite often when a youngster is struggling with their reading is that some well-meaning soul will come along and say, have you ever thought that perhaps little Jimmy might be dyslexic? Perhaps you should go, send him off for dyslexia assessment and see whether he is, and if he is, well, great. Now, there's all sorts of problems with that. The first problem is that actually making a diagnosis of dyslexia is not scientific, because the criteria that people use varies greatly from one person to another. In other words, what one person thinks is dyslexia, another person doesn't. So firstly, you can't make a decision in a clear, consistent way about whether a child is dyslexic or not. Secondly, even if you do decide or do determine that the child is dyslexic, having done that, there is no intervention, there is no educational treatment which you would do differently for that child than you would do for any other child who's struggling to learn to read. There are some weird and wacky interventions and treatments, but none of those have the support of academic scientific research.
But having a test and a diagnosis for dyslexia can be a positive thing, as we hear now from Patricia Simmons.
Evelyn wore a handful of dust. If it was anyone's fault, it was Mr. Grant Manson's making him go in. It wasn't anyone's fault, they say. Tom was alone in the library. I was diagnosed probably 1997 when I went into college. It's the first time I was actually diagnosed with dyslexia.
And how old were you at the time?
I was probably 17 or 18.
So you went through the whole schooling experience being dyslexic but not actually knowing it?
Yes, I did. While I was at primary school and secondary school, at primary school that they didn't really give me any extra help, but they knew that I had difficulties with reading and writing, so maybe the tutor might take more time working with me. At secondary school, I think they realised I wasn't learning like the other children in the school, so I went to a girls' school. So my tutor realised that I kind of needed extra support with my writing and my reading, and I believe I would have been probably about 12 when I started getting extra support. So at times it would either be in the classroom or I'd be taken out of the classroom and sit with a tutor. And just go through some reading. Sometimes it's basic, even reading the time that I struggled with.
So you were given some extra support at school. Mm-hmm. Did that help?
Yeah, it did. It was still a bit difficult because I really didn't know I didn't know why I needed extra help. Nobody can explain to me why. I knew that I was struggling, but it was almost like I was different from the other kids in the class, because I had to be taken out of the classroom to actually get this extra help, which I actually really appreciated. And it was actually to have somebody who could spend one-on-one time with me to actually go through everything, because I kind of felt confused in the classroom when a teacher would talk about something and then I had to sit down and kind of present a piece of work, and I'd always struggle and I couldn't quite understand why I was always struggling. So I found it helpful sitting with a tutor one-to-one and actually, them going through things with me.
So you were given this extra help. How are you feeling?
I was really pleased about it. I was kind of thinking, okay, fantastic. I I can start to understand things, or start to do the work a lot more easier. So I was really grateful for the extra help, but it did make me feel kind of like maybe outside the group. I'd be taken out of the class to have these one-to-one sessions. On occasion, somebody would sit in the room, but maybe that was more embarrassing actually for me. So actually to be taken out of the class was helpful, but in a way I'd miss what was going on in the class with the other students. So I felt a bit excluded, I think, with the other kids in the class.
So when you were at college and you were 17 years old and you got your diagnosis, how did it feel to finally get that diagnosis?
It was a relief. It was a huge relief, because I felt as if I knew what was wrong with me. I wasn't just the dumb girl in the class, or the one that didn't get things, and the one that was slow. I actually had a diagnosis of what was maybe you could describe it as what was wrong with me, and I kind of knew. I started to learn how to manage it and how to cope with it, whilst before I didn't know how to manage it.
So what kind of coping strategies do you use?
Well, one of the things is obviously I realised that the more I read, and the easier it would be for me to recognise or even remember words. I realised that I needed to have no distraction when I'm studying. I grew up in a household of 4 other children, so there was 5 of us all together. So I needed to be in a quiet room to actually do any work. And I kind of realised that I needed to give myself also some time, and I needed to ask for help if I didn't understand something. And also to kind of, I guess, starting to read about dyslexia as well, and having the tutor explain to me what it was, and kind of some coping strategies. I think I remember the first time that somebody had suggested it. I was kind of so relieved that actually there was a name for whatever it is that I've got. I remember somebody from the education department in Islington who came to my mum's house actually, and kind of had a chat with her, and they were saying that maybe I had special learning difficulties, and I should look at going to a special school to help me with my learning. And my mum was very she was very upset by that, and she said there was nothing wrong with me, and that she didn't feel that I needed to be in a special school, and she kind of had an idea what special school meant. And I remember there was a kid that lived nearby who would get in this special bus, had special learning difficulties, would get in the bus and would go to this school. And I remember being quite curious what that was about and asking my mum about it, and she was like, that's for kids that have got problems. And so when this woman suggested that I should get on that bus as well, and my mum was she wasn't happy at all and didn't agree with it, and she wanted me to continue going to I guess a normal secondary school. So in a way I'm quite glad that she did that, but I guess I'm disappointed that I didn't really get diagnosed when I was younger, because actually I think it would have helped me with my exams. It would have just helped me understand myself better.
So now you're working full time. How does dyslexia impact on your day-to-day work?
So currently I work as a counsellor. So I see clients one-to-one. I have to do some written work. And sometimes that might involve presentation, talking in a group. I struggle with notes. I struggle with names. So kind of even sometimes remembering my clients' names. I know that I am very conscious of it. So if I was to do maybe a short notes about a session, I would need to be in a quiet room without any distraction, and just sit in that room, and I'll be able to finish it maybe in half an hour. But if I'm in a room with, and often I am in a room with other colleagues, and they might be talking amongst themselves, I probably would. I do struggle with that, and I'm not always able to actually type what I want to say about the sessions. Before seeing a client, I would often kind of look up the clients' names. Sometimes I ask my colleague, if it's the first time I've seen a client, I'll ask my colleague how to pronounce the clients' names. So my memory isn't too bad once I've connected with the client, and I've had a few sessions with the client. I could often remember the client stories and maybe what we've spoken about in the past sessions. But often my challenge is probably kind of writing down session notes, maybe doing a report. Those are the kind of struggles I kind of have really with dyslexia.
But it sounds like you found ways of coping with your dyslexia. Do you think dyslexia ever has or ever will stop you from doing anything you want to do?
I think dyslexia isn't I don't see it as a disability. I see it as almost like it's a way of looking at maybe looking at the written word in a different way, or experiencing the world in a slightly different way. So my dyslexia means that I experience. I'm a lot more creative, I think, with how I remember or how I experience things that are going on around me. I know that it's a bit strange, really, because I sometimes use things like mind maps when I have to do like presentations. Quite easy for me to remember a drawing or to remember things laid out a certain way, but if it's just kind of written, it's a lot more difficult for me to remember it in that structure. And so if I go to places, I remember how to go back. If I've just been to somewhere for the first time, I know how to get back or how to go back. I just think my mind has just learnt to be a lot more creative, where I struggle with other things, like concentration and things like that. So I've just learned how to manage things differently, really, and cope. So I don't think it should actually stop you from doing anything you want to do. The whole fromage, adventures in the delectable world of French cheese. Delectable world of French cheese. Kathy Leeson. For a quarter of a century, Roquefort would remain